And so right now there's backdoor operations. Essentially, the Fed is saying who they're going to save, who they're not going to save. And the bigger game is a geopolitical game between China, Russia, and the U.S. But this system is becoming more and more unstable. And these decisions, centralized decisions, are having enormous knock-on effects. It's becoming more and more unstable. This likely goes on for a long time. The U.S. dollar, I think you know this too. U.S. dollar is not going to die tomorrow. In fact,
or 90 days.
Exactly, or 90 days. And the probabilities do increase for a nonlinear type of event, there's still really small probabilities right now for that type of event, in, like you said, in 90 days. Because what's more likely to happen is a different country has to devalue their currency and hyperinflate their currency, and then they want U.S. dollars, and then their labor becomes way cheaper for the U.S. to be able to drag more, essentially strip mine their labor and resources to be able to feed the machine. So that is a higher likelihood outcome for other countries all around. And you have to ask yourself, even if you think about Bitcoin, why isn't everybody in Venezuela on Bitcoin when they have 100% year-on-year inflation rate? And people just get comfortable in the system and they think they can solve it from the system. So they do a whole bunch of other things to make that system stronger when they could just walk across in an open monetary network. But our minds don't change that fast. And so it's highly likely that this happens in waves with more and more adoption and more, and the rails of Bitcoin is strong. It's still extremely positive for Bitcoin, but it's not like an overnight hyper Bitcoinization like many people think.
I wonder if, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, but I have a similar view. I don't think it's going to happen immediately, but I do think that it will happen in waves, and those waves will get bigger and bigger and bigger, like tides coming into shore, more
Agreed.
or less.
Yep.
These waves of increasing liquidity, decreasing liquidity, and these waves will probably grow, and the degree of absurdity in each wave will probably grow. And then I think eventually, when there's some sort of critical mass, let's say, then I think perhaps there could be some sort of escape velocity. I don't think it's anytime soon, but I wonder if that's the case.
I think that's exactly the case, and that's
Okay.
that's why through Ego Death, that's where we're investing in the companies building the rails to be able to take billions of people onto this network.
Yeah. Could we, before we get into Bitcoin, why it fixes the theft, and the societal implications of that, I'd love to talk a little bit more about, especially particularly in your experience, because I'm sure you've seen so much change in the technological world the last couple of decades. But one of my main pains and frustrations and fears as well with this inflation theft paradox that we have is looking at historical examples. And one of the most horrible ones to me is that of World War II, and that, most people don't know this because it's not particularly taught. But with the hyperinflation in Germany being, in my view, being one of the, basically, the way I would put it would be that the hyperinflation in Germany, or Weimar Republic in the 1920s, basically shattered societal trust in Germany. And in that weakness, in that desperation, they were more willing to faction off into people that, as you say, promised the world getting better, promised everyone recovering, and some of them decided to attack class, like communists, and others, ethnic groups like fascists. And World War II is an example. In the beginning, with the inflation in Germany, and then during the war, when Hitler was trying to force Britain into a banking crisis by actually printing British banknotes and British currency and aerating and dumping it into the British system, trying to force Britain to go down with inflation. Like that to me is that pinnacle example of the poison that is inflation, that it forced people, or it aided in people getting to that point of desperation, and then it became essentially a weapon of the war to a certain degree. And then there's theories that extended the war by a certain degree of time and all that. And so whether it's war, whether it's theft, that's my personal concern, is that if in these waves, and if in that point that we have some sort of hyperbolic event, what are your primary concerns within the fiat system? I know obviously we'll get to the more optimistic point there, but for me, I think the rate of technology changing gives both opportunity and threat. And I wonder what what you think those large threats are, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that.
So let's start with your first thing, and I think you know in my book, I explained exactly this process and World War II in it creating us versus them. And if you look at your Twitter feed, or if you look at other feeds, if you look at the crazy how people are elevating heroes, their hero, versus a different hero, on essentially that all of those heroes are based on manipulated money and theft. And they're not advocating to remove it; they're advocating for more of it. Then you can see how easy it is to fall down that path, right? You see how easy it is. Look at a daily report on the news, and it's all us versus them, and that's how you hijack. That's how you gain power in the system. You create another weaker part of a group, and you say it's their fault. You hijack the power. Then you change the laws, and you take more power, and you serve your small group at the expense of others. And then when that doesn't work anymore, because a huge part of the population is missing out, that either flips back and forth. If you look at other countries, it flips back and forth through revolt, or it escalates to the next level, and you have to create a greater enemy outside your borders. If you look through the entire world right now, that's what's happening in the entire world. And every single action people are taking inside that system, with whoever they're choosing, whoever on top of that system, is reinforcing that system. It has profound implications, though, because no one would vote for a different system from that system. And that's why, because you couldn't. Because if somebody said, if a politician said, I'm going to let the whole thing collapse, you'd be out with your pitchforks. To vote for more printing or more easing. You don't want to look deeper, and that's creating. There's this short-term bias that's constantly creating more and more fear as the world's driving itself off a cliff. And keep in mind when go further, and this is actually going to be really important to why things like Nostr are critically important. It is not enough just to have the money that's decentralized and secure. Because if the communication channels are not decentralized and secure, if they're centralized, then in order to block the money, the communication channels will be used against you. And you think you're capable of not being influenced by artificial intelligence or what someone else says, but history proves very different, and your actions prove really differently. You wouldn't believe in all the same brands as you believe in if you weren't being able to be influenced.
If you are buying Bitcoin, if you are trying to understand Bitcoin better, I highly encourage that after the education, you quickly get into that self-custody route. It's very intimidating for people. It's very hard for people to understand where to go. And that's why not only do I put out this free content out there for you to enjoy, but I also do everything I can to accelerate that self-custody adoption. So I do work at the Bitcoin Advisor. If you have an interest in a collaborative custody multi-sig solution, an estate plan, not just for you, but for your family, for your kids, your loved ones, your business, your church, your organization, whatever it is, if you are looking to have an understanding of self-custody, the trade-offs of single sig, of multi-sig, collaborative custody, fully self-sovereign custody, whatever the case, I'm happy to help. Our primary goal, my primary goal, is to help you have a secure transition of your Bitcoin off exchanges into your own hands, okay? I'm here to simplify the process, address your challenges and your questions, and ensure you feel confident every step of the way. So you can find me at thebitcoinadvisor.com/Luke Broyles. You can book a free consultation with me there. You can book a free meeting with there. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And I care far less about if you hire me or not. I care far more about education, which is why we give out dozens of pages of free content for you to enjoy and consume and learn about Bitcoin self-custody so that you can have generational wealth for you and your future generations without losing sleep. So if you like some of that free documents and free education about Bitcoin, I'm happy to share that with you. Again, just go to the Bitcoin Advisor, Luke Broyles. You can find my booking for meeting a consultation with me. So thank you again for enjoying this Bitcoin educational content. And secondly, whether you use me or not, whether you do single sig, multi-sig, whatever the case, please start taking self-custody, start getting your Bitcoins off exchanges as soon as possible. Link in the description. Thanks.